So we are live with Carolina Poets. Welcome. This is Poetry Goes Viral, a bi-monthly series hosted on the Carolina Poets Facebook page and our YouTube channel. So we are multicasting. We are everywhere right now. We're here the second and fourth Thursdays of each month. I'm your host, Andrew Clark, and we have a co-curator, Kimberly Sims Gibbs. So I'd like to thank her for helping me to host this series. So for the series, we feature poets with connections to the Carolinas in some way, which means we host some of the most talented poets on the planet from two of the writing estates. We feature established poets and emerging voices. So for the series, we've been fortunate enough to have readers such as Jackie Shelton Green, Ray McManus, Tyree Day, Nicole Brown, Jacinta White, and many others. If you've missed our readings for the past year and a half, never fear, they are archived forever on the Facebook Carolina Poets page. And the newer ones are all on YouTube, maybe from the last 6 months or so. So I want to give people a chance to connect before we get started. But tonight, you're in luck. We're going to hear from three beautiful poets. We have Yvette Murray, Terrance Elmore, and Mel Sherrer. So just to kill just a minute of time before we get started, I'm going to start like a little segment I call What is Andrew Reading? So just to give folks another second or so to connect, and then we'll bring on our first reader, Yvette. So I'm currently reading A Boy Named Boy from Earl Braggs. So Earl is a poet from Tennessee. He's actually been featured on Carolina Poets, but this is a memoir, which is a little bit different. It carries a lot of the poetry that he uses in his work. And it talks a lot about sort of growing up in a town where there are only a few Black folks. And Terrance is an African American writer. So wonderful memoir. I love it. Wet Cement Press actually put that book out. And I'm also reading the complete poems of Anne Sexton. So that's what Andrew is reading. I also just finished a novel called Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby. So in the chat, let us know what you're reading. We'd love to hear what you're reading. So I want to make sure our poets have plenty of time. So I want to go ahead and introduce our first poet. Yvette Murray received her B.A. in English from Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I should have asked her how to pronounce that. She has been published in Fall Lines, the Petigru Review, Catfish Stew, Barzakh, Genesis Science Fiction Magazine. I want to hear more about that. She's forthcoming in Emrys Journal and Call and Response Journal. She is a 2020 Watering Hole Fellow and a 2019 Pushcart Prize nominee. Presently, she's assembling her first collection of poetry in a children's book series. So please welcome to the stage, Miss Yvette. How are you?
I am doing well, Andrew. How are you?
Doing well. Looking forward to your reading.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here and happy to be here as well with the other two amazing poets. I'm going to set my timer so I don't go too long. And there is a wonderful artist here in Charleston by the name of Linda Fantuzzo. And I want to start with an ekphrastic piece on her piece called Shadow World. And you can find it on her website. It's an amazing little piece, and it's called Stone Steps. A person can run up and down those stone and still not be a person, not to them. Our only house was stone steps. My daddy, the plantation stone mason. My mama, the midwife. So we seen lots of life, and a life that feels like death up and down the stone steps. My daddy claimed Igbo and my mama Maasai, the two met in a pest house on Sullivan's Island, and a short 1,000 years began. Years that begat my brother and I to bondage, begat to bondage and dealt for another's pleasure. Too pretty, too strong, too much for a mama, a proud Maasai mama to bear. So without her mind, on a silent dark blue night, she up and down the stone steps. The fire could be seen from the Ashley River, but river water won't do no good. Not enough, never enough to put out a mama's pain. There were no people inside, just property. A distant splash drowned out the clamor as the drinking gourd led us away, far away, up and down the stone steps. Accents after Denise Froman. My mama, too, has the sky in her mouth. She carries beautiful Hausa, rhythmic Igbo, and exquisite Yoruba all smashed into one gumbo called Gullah. Gullah, the language of survival. In muck of rice fields and muck of this republic, it flows with a rhythm so deep, 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 it has to be eaten, as all good gumbo should, with cornbread. We know that the beauty of this Creole is living on nothing, thriving in mist. By the moon itself, Gullah pounds the shore like the tide, dragging grains of sand to build islands elsewhere. Hidden deep within our throats, language of rebellion, seen in the eyes, heard in the chin. My mama brought it to me with the pride of bare feet on their trinkets to sell. I am from Charleston, and I love Charleston, and so we have homage. In the middle of any night, one Jimmy Choo stiletto lies on the floor. Rain pours, 12-story windows. The soiree is over and passion complete. A misplaced corporate girl tosses like flotsam. Against the background of snoring and Egyptian cotton sheets, this nightmare rages. Her footprints, as they vanish from palmetto-lined streets, spray from the Atlantic drying on her pecan brown skin, a flavor she can hardly recall, ingredients forgotten. Many magnolia-scented seasons have gone, and the impasse hovers, stiff pillow of regret. Of this she dreams. Pickaninny braids, we used to call them. Thick, knotted diadems of ancestry lay patiently on our necks. We would run around without shirts and nobody cared. And the sun would place bronze brushstrokes on our flat nipples. Tea parties, not in Boston, but Memphis and Charleston, were our social scene. Stick forks and mud pies. We knew just whom to invite. Fishnet stockings and hairs all pressed. Black patent leather shoes clicking in the back pew. Mother Emanuel AME Church. It's a very serious ode I am about to do right now. It is the ode to the creases in my pants. Sometimes, right in the middle of board meetings, the memories hit me hard. Emotion is seconded, and my hands slide down mountain ridges created by heat and spray starch on my 100% cotton blue slacks. I grab the memories, tucking them deep within my chest. See, I feel particularly powerful when the creases in my pants, they cut the palms of my hands. That's that sharp as a tack, that casket sharp, that conquering a world that don't want you sharp. I get this from her. Although I, in sheer defiance, rebelled like the Russian citizenry in 1917. It was actually 1975, and that teen thing told me I didn't need no creases in my pants to make it. I could raise my fist and do anything I wanted, except plow through walls in bank offices trying to get mortgages if I looked like yesterday's newspaper left on a park bench. She insisted, and like all good rebellions, mine came to an end. Or I came to my orange senses, or rather, I went back to my future. You see, generations have been wired, then in violence, to this moment here. We were set apart by those who built pyramids, and she was one of the first to raise her fist by plowing through walls with creases and the magnificent intelligence, talent, and wit that are in our genome. You, meticulous detail of mine, Gardner admiring, sit with me at the head of any table. You open doors for me like a southern gentleman. Your power never ending, you put fear in its place and lock it there more than 1,000 years. Inheritance. Invisible ink spilled into a third little brown-eyed girl with glasses and spoken teeth. It holds her like those heavy dog bookends I carry from house to one day leave. It helps so she can put on your strong back, a sweater to keep out the chill. Like vines or blood running through the hallways of the house we lost, your tall spirit shines so we can see to read books and ancient texts. On the walls, no pictures of grandfather next to 3 sets of degrees, but space for the next little brown-eyed girl to put one. Your thirsty mind, your devotion, your stiff independence, wander among many gone things that, like you, are now gone, except black and white photos with scalloped edges where your spidery handwriting carved names, faces, and events together as the Seabrook tapestry phrase grows connected, always connecting. I was white. I was white before James Brown wrote that song saying it so loud. Then the blackness sneaked in on me like the twilight fog off of Carolina Swamp. Dizzying that fog is. I tried to hold on to the side of the mahogany dining room table that sat next to the mahogany hutch in the twice used room in the lovely, lovely home on the hill. But I could not. That whole scene started to melt from the heat of empty rice plantations and cotton fields in my mirror. A road, the 50 trailway station that filled my rear view. Dark mahogany faces that resemble. Now, humming songs from funerals I did not attend, I turned myself inside out. Now, Charleston, as much as I love it very much, is not the only place where art flourishes in America. Take the 5 to Harlem for the I2 Arts Collective. After the funeral, during the pass, I asked the question, which train do I take to get to Harlem? My cousin quizzed me, why do you want to go to Harlem? I have both pen and paper, I answered. Like a sea turtle, I am guided by light. I figured out that from my current perch, I should take the 5 to Harlem. Fret, my family did, as I would not wait. A Gullah Geechee out of place, I had no fear of the big city or the rats. All I could see was stones, speakeasies, and Friday sessions with Zora and Langston. I have both pen and paper. I want to go breathe the air. I know that the footprints can still be seen. In Harlem, I will find the ingredients of my Renaissance, the spirit of spirit. I have both pen and paper. Which train do I take to Harlem? Minstrel Man. We're going to stick with the little art theme for right now. They are used to being entertained by us. Even old field hollers can move the moon. It's like something only we humans do, a dark and dandy deed at twilight. Even old field hollers can move the moon. Then we paint in colors and faces, a dark and dandy deed at twilight, walking in the dust of children's bones. Then we paint in colors and faces. We got all that jig and that jive, see? Walking in the dust of children's bones could be bebop or ballet or both. We got all that jig and that jive, see? From Middle Passage to Carnegie could be bebop or ballet or both. Bring satin and patent leather swan songs from Middle Passage to Carnegie Hall. It's like something only we humans do. Bring satin and patent leather swan songs. They are used to being entertained by us. Now we're going to talk about food. Got a couple of poems that are about. So here we go. And this, if you pay attention, there's some recipes in here too you can hold on to. 2-to-1 ratio. When Gullah Geechee folk meet at the stove, they speak about how to cook stone ground grits right. That 2-to-1 ratio. Instant is like the biblical abomination. That ratio reveals itself in refined spaces too, like cheer squads, boardrooms. It does not feed, not an exquisite dish to share with new neighbors. This 2-to-1 ratio, it comes dragging the cruel vestige of a past life so dark, so twisted, one can only speak of in whispers. What's left? Shrimp is made from what's left. The Gullah Geechee always have a few shrimp, some fatback onions, and grits. Now she sits on menus with what they call tasso gravy, and they name her Fine. She's been fine long time. Soup is the same. Carrots out the field, a piece of onion, stalk of celery, some rice, a chicken leg equals soup. But what can we do? Do we do with what's left from a life? A body bereft of breath, still eyes like fish in a sink, old photos, blood pooling, and time. What can be made from that? Okay, 2 more. Here's a list of that which was not enough. A boy with a bag of Skittles, a boy with a toy gun, a boy, a boy, a boy. A female EMT asleep in her bed, a woman you already had in custody, a man selling loose cigarettes, nor a man running away from you. Tommy Smith, Don Carlos giving the salute. 58. Peter Norman, who stood with them and suffered too. A man who was cooking barbecue for hungry people. A 7-year-old girl sleeping on her family's couch. The mighty Igbo who cut their time free in 1803. A woman playing video games with her nephew. A man left uncovered on the ground 4 hours. Another man on the ground 12 hours. 9 people worshiping at Bible study. Kaepernick and Reed kneeling on the field. All the others who live in other poems. Black Lives Matter t-shirts and hats. Killing a man in front of his child. The flavors of a protest crowd. The roar you now see. A one-person protest. The silent protests and raised fists. And last but not least, Ecclesiastes. All is done. Time to put the folded paper into its place. The stony stack of forevers on a dusty shelf in the triangle corner of the room we never use. Time for this smiling cover photo to join the other grinning stills, doomed to be pulled out only when passers-by stop in on their way to Florida for a cold glass of lemonade, some laughter, and a piece of pound cake. Time for the shattered clay pot that fell off of a black table to pull itself back together and begin to pour hot, fresh tea onto the earth again, even though some of the pieces are missing. Thank you so much for spending some of your time with me this evening. Please follow me on Twitter at Miss Yvette Writes.
Thank you, Yvette. That was gorgeous. Thank you so much. Do you have a few minutes to stick around for if we have questions at the end? I think she's still with us. We will have a question and answer session at the end. So go ahead and write your questions right there in Facebook or on YouTube, wherever you're watching. We'll get the questions. We'll share them with the poets. So bear that in mind. Sometimes it's nice to hear from them after you've heard their work. So up next, Charleston's really in the house tonight. We have Yvette from Charleston and also Terrance P. Elmore. So Terrance is a South Carolina native and Benedict College graduate who's been writing since childhood. His passion for writing led to the creation of his blog, The Brown Sugar Cafe, where every Wednesday you'll find a poem that will encourage and inspire you. He's the author of Love Letters, a collection of poems, and the collection The Essence of Love. Both are centered around love because he recognized a need to distinguish the difference between real love and misrepresented love. Currently, he's working on 2 new projects. To connect with him, you can visit his website. I'm going to drop that link in the chat. So please welcome to the stage, Mr. Terrance P. Elmore. Hey, Terrance.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. So glad to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of my work. Good evening, everyone. Tonight I'll be reading some poems from my blog and also poems from my books, Love Letters, collection of poems, and also The Essence of Love. This first poem that I'm going to read is from my blog. I wrote it July of last year. It was kind of around that time when the pandemic was kind of hitting people kind of hard because we thought it would only last for a couple of months, a couple of weeks. This one is called Looking for Joy. I went looking for joy because happiness wasn't enough. Don't get me wrong, happiness is good, but sometimes it will pass you on the street without so much as a hello. Happiness is an opportunist, unwilling to stay when times get tough. It only shows up to show sadness who's in control. What about the time when sadness isn't the issue, but motivation is? Happiness is that quick fix when the veins streaming from our hearts are craving something to make us feel good or to take the edge off. When I went looking for joy, I realized that happiness has always known the way, sometime passing us by in hopes that we'll turn our thoughts and follow it to joy. Happiness is altruist that looks for opportunities to bring us closer together to joy, but we often miss what's right in front of us. Happiness is the pieces of wholeness that can bring us joy. When I look for joy, I realize that joy is a settling assurance that everything is going to be okay. I went looking for joy and realized that joy is a deep-rooted happiness. I went looking for joy and discovered that when I embrace happiness, I will find joy, and nothing can take that away. And this next one I'm going to read is from my first book. It's actually a poem that I wrote back when Facebook had notes. It was something that I wrote about 10 years prior to me publishing the book. So I thought it would be pretty cool to incorporate that into my first book. And it's called Search. If you search, you will find me. If you search, you will see me. If you search, you will talk to me. If you search, you will learn me. If you search, you will hold me. If you search, you will feel me. If you search, you will complete me. If you search, I will love you forever. If I search, I will discover you were here with me the entire time. And this next one is also from my blog. I posted this one recently. It's entitled, I Became You. When I saw you, I began to stare in admiration. The fearlessness in your eyes opened up the windows of my soul. My spirit was awakened and renewed. The joy in your smile brought laughter into my life, a newfound happiness and appreciation for the little things in life. Your upright posture gave me the confidence to stand more firm in my truth. I was looking in the mirror and I saw a reflection of me. I no longer doubted myself and became who I was destined to be. I looked in the mirror and I became you. And this next one is also from my first book, Love Letters, and it's called Inspiration. Inspiration, the spark that sets you on the path to life's purpose and meaning, the embrace of beauty's nature, pure in form and spirit. The first time your eyes meet theirs, the connection between what could be and what will be. It's the reassurance of knowing impossible no longer exists. I can do this. I will do this. I have accomplished it. Words of encouragement, words of admiration. They reach and release the deepest parts of our creativity, words of inspiration. And my poems are dedicated towards love, and recently I've been on this journey to help people discover and embrace self-love. It's very important to have self-love because you can't love someone else if you first don't love yourself. And it's very important to love yourself above anyone else. A lot of times we talk about self-love and some people think it's selfish, but if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to serve and take care of others. And I have, let's see here, another one. This is from my newest book, The Essence of Love. And this one is called Definition. Doubt defines love as a non-existent place because of many lies told in its name. Belief defines love as a place where truth always dwells. Disappointment defines love as a desert island that leaves your spirits parched and your mind conflicted. Belief defines love as a vast oasis where the waters of certainty are plentiful and clarity is sustained. Comparison defines love as a counterfeit love that was manipulated and deceived. Confidence defines love as an unwavering freedom and truth. Heartbreak defines love as inevitable hurt and pain that enjoys showing its ugly face. Happiness defines love as endless joy and peace that flourishes in beauty. Love defines itself as a place where the heart desires to be because that's where it belongs. When love is authentic, it is where the heart will live because love will always endure. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you all for sharing your time with me. I hope you enjoyed.
Terrance, thank you so much. I like a poet that is just unabashed about writing love poetry. You know, the poet Jessica Jacobs says all poems are love poems, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. So can you stick around for some questions at the end?
Sure.
All right, great. So up next, we're going to have Mel Sherrer. So Mel is a writer, editor, and educator. She received her B.F.A. from Hollins University in Roanoke, Virginia, and her M.F.A. from Converse College. Go Converse. In Spartanburg, South Carolina. Mel teaches and conducts creative writing and performance literature workshops. Her work is featured in SWWIM, Interim Poetics, the Racket Journal, and many others. She currently resides in Las Vegas, Nevada, where she's joining us now. Mel, welcome to the stage. How are you?
Hey, everybody. I'm doing really well. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sound great.
Okay, great. I'm extremely excited to read to you guys tonight, mostly because I love writing poems, but I love a captive audience. So I can't wait to read to you guys. I don't think I'll do very much talking this evening just because I usually am bound by the constraints of a theme or maybe publication. So typically at a reading, I am reading poems that have been published. But tonight I'm reading all my favorites, the ones that satisfy me the most in terms of writing and reading. So I'm definitely excited to share. I'm going to start with a poem that was just picked up this week for publication. This poem's called Wild Hog. I was baptized as a little girl. I remember it well. The church had one room and a basement. The choir was a handful of Black women. The walls were pine wood paneled. The walls of the baptismal pool were tiled, a memory shade of blue. The preacher gathered everyone out back around the pool, which was dug right out of the red Georgia clay. You had to descend a set of stairs down into the earth itself to stand knee-deep in the water. I don't remember being afraid. I could smell something cooking. You could have dunked me in anything to get to it. I had seen 4 men carrying it from the woods where they had hunted. All of Greensboro County must have smelled savory. The preacher dipped me, lifted me back above the surface. He said, "Good girl." I felt good, and my mouth watered. So I typically write short poems. None of them exceed a page. Some of them are just 2 lines. This is an example of one of those poems.
Let's see, Mel, are you still with us? We're going to give Mel. Oh,
Sorry about that, guys.
There you are. You disappeared for a second. We all panicked after we went to church. We were like, oh, man.
Look, we've been having a little bit of internet difficulties at my home, so I'm going to keep rolling with it. You guys hear that last poem?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, awesome. Perfect then. We're in good shape. This next one's called Climate Control. When I pray for rain in Vegas, I don't like to call it prayer. There are thousands of people living in the tunnels beneath the streets of the Neon Strip. One good storm could push them out to sea. When it does rain, I call my mother, who raised me in the woods in an RV, with a thin tin roof that beats snare rhythms whenever it would rain. I don't like to call it prayer, praying for roofs, praying for rain. Like Yvette mentioned, I like to write a lot about food as well. I think it works as an excellent vehicle for metaphor. This next poem is called Saffron. When I want a new recipe, I like to watch videos from the world over. Don't give me something from my own backyard. I want to live vicariously through the screen and then finally on the plate. In a village in the Iranian mountains, a man adds saffron to his rustic dish, not a pinch. He heaps it on the plums and on the dates. The pomegranates are sprinkled then too. Another fistful just for tea. A saffron soup stews the beef. What enlightenment when a recipe shows me something I cannot have right here in the land of plenty. Shows me a simple luxury I'll only ever taste with my eyes. Keeping on with the food theme, this next poem is an homage to my sister. It's titled Canned Spinach. I know a few recipes. I learned most of them as an adult. And I did not cook very much as a child, even when my mother was sick with cancer. My sister cooked for us, and she was good too. She could make hors d'oeuvres out of making do. She could make a French-style omelet with waxy cheese and canned spinach. That's what I want these days when I go to cook. Not great ingredients, but great intentions. This next poem is titled Bittersweet Punchlines. When my therapist asked me if I have fond memories of my childhood, I rushed to say, oh yes, I'm in love with the memory of trees and brambles so thick only a child could worm through, and red dust spinning up behind the tires of bikes, either too small or too tall, my knees constantly scuffed and bleeding, my sister and I sweaty as a cold Coke bottle in the sun, and mama hoisting yellow cats up the Rocky Creek bank. Yes, I go to those memories, like pressing a finger into a bruise. Funny kind of pain, bittersweet. This next poem is titled, I Think About My Sisters in the Morning. One back east, one in her grave. This poem's titled, Fat of the Land. I like eating in wilderness, what it takes to make a meal from only flesh and fire. I like the applause of grease splattering coals. Nothing home in the city whispers, so I want to be free. If I sit close enough, I can hear the sizzle of fat on the rock top. Closer still, the wild lashing of flames like wings beating air. This poem was also recently picked up for publication, so I'm excited about that. I'm glad these minimalist poems are getting some love. This one's titled Crab Legs. My father was a cook, though I never saw him cook. Mama said he was good with seafood. He could butcher, fillet, fry, and saute. He could season and boil a perfect vat of crab legs. I imagined him that way, doing only that, perhaps the way he is, just a show. This next poem is titled Truffle, and it's from the same collection where all these other food titles are coming from. So if that collection ever makes it out into the world, hopefully it will. It'll be like reading a recipe book, y'all. Anyway, this one's called Truffle. I don't regret my education, although I incurred debt. It tastes better out the mud. I will not equate myself to some not yet fineness, waiting to be taken and consumed. It's not an unripe fruit, not a truffle hiding in the dirt, but a whole come up, a broken chain. This next poem is titled Before the Fog Lifts. There's a moment every morning before the fog lifts. My sister's voice is clear as a bell. I even plan to call. My body is sinewy and pliant, smarting as it wakes before memory, the Oh, there we go. Sorry about that, y'all. So this next poem is titled Chuck Wagon Chow. I'd like to go LARPing on an old chuck wagon trail. Yes, role play. I wouldn't want to actually go back. I could make one pot shot, red flannel hash, sourdough biscuits crowded in a cast iron, salt pork and pinto beans, spotted pup with molasses to taste, red-eye gravy, tender stew, so many rustic dishes I'd love to make, but the rest, the wagon and the dress, must be only for play. I know the danger of back in my day. There's no touching bygone times during which the presence of my nature, my skin, my body would leave the meat of textbook history falling right off the bone. I just want to make sure y'all can still hear me. Can you still hear me?
We got you. Yep.
Excellent. Perfect. These last few poems I'm going to read, I want to read with Black Lives Matter in mind, mostly because I think it's easy to get wrapped up in kind of like the summertime feel of, good times here, but we're kind of still in a crisis, And so with the same vibe that Yvette gave you guys, I want to read some of the poems I've written in a collection which addresses police brutality. This one's called If I Held a Vigil for Each One, the rest of my life would be handheld candles, cards and crosses on the street corner, one lasting moment of silence. This next one's called Tear Gas. To whomever we are beloved, are you crying yet? This poem's titled Reform. It's not about reciprocity. It's not like someone proposed waking you up in the night, kicking in your door, or killing your kinfolk, then showing up at the school to take your children to. This next poem is titled Salt and Pepper Spray. What is it about a Black man with a little gray in his beard that drives people wild? A hint that tugs up from the corner of his lips when he laughs, a streak that shrugs on his cheeks when he speaks. I think it's about seeing a Black man get to live to be a certain age. And this is the last one I'll read, although I know I've not exactly maxed out on time, but as you can see, as a minimalist, I can just raise you guys with poems one after the other. So I could do it all night. So I'll finish on this one instead of doing that. This one's titled Cinder. Black children die from standard issued bullet holes, and the world wants a sermon. Wants plantation woe songs, velvet robes, candles, and psalms. Wants Black people to grieve within the confines of billowy church sleeves. Let me come as I am, wailing about the dead. Not a preacher, but an arsonist. Thank you, guys. I'm so glad to be here with you tonight, and I love reading. Sorry about the internet issues, but I'm glad you guys stuck with me, and I'd love some questions if anybody's got any.
Yeah, Mel, that was great. I love the economy of these two-line poems, that Sisters in the Morning. I mean, it just says so much. And I was sharing in the chat with the others. I'm not brave enough to write two-line poems or smart enough, or I don't know what the issue is there. But I'm going to bring everybody back to the stage. We've got kind of our little Brady Bunch thing going here.
I like it.
So if you're watching, we do have time to take some questions. And I do have a question from Joshua Myers for Yvette. And that question is, Yvette, he's always wondered how you develop your performance style and voice. Can you talk about that?
Performance art, spoken word is very prominent these days. And so I would go and I would watch and I would see what they did. But also, we have a tendency of having poetry in bars where people are not really listening. And a lot of times we are also very much a minority. And so I would go into what I call the most hostile places that I could find, where it looked like me, where there was young kids and they didn't want to hear what I had to say. And I spoke my truth there. I made them listen. I remember once we were and it was like a little bar setting, and there was like a cigar, people smoking cigars in the corner and ordering drinks and everything. And I said, y'all gonna listen to me today. And it was just this big giant voice that bellowed from someplace back on a plantation somewhere. It was like the ancestors and everybody, and the whole place got quiet until I finished. So I said all that to say, go to the most hostile environment where you think people don't want to hear you, don't understand you, and you make them understand with your words.
I love that. That's a great image you painted there. And yeah, we're all here for it. We want to hear it all, Yvette. So I do have a question for the group. So what do you do when you're looking for inspiration? So I've heard people say, well, I work in my garden, I go for a hike, I walk in the woods, I listen to the birds sing. So maybe we'll start with Mel. Mel, is there something that you do when you're kind of looking for ideas?
The easy answer is no. But so when you say, do you go for a hike? Do you walk in the woods? Those are the things I do to decompress, really, to let the inspiration be what it is. I got to be honest. I'm a really prolific writer because I spent most of my life up until the last year writing for me, writing for education's sake, writing for whatever reason I had. And it really was therapeutic to me. So now I mean, almost every day or at least weekly, I have a concept that I want to somehow work into poetry. So then I have to get myself in a state of mind where I can work it into poetry. But typically, I don't do something to inspire myself. I do something to get out of the way of the inspiration. I like to go fishing, if that answers the question.
So writers are always writing, right? Even when we're not writing, we're writing, right?
Yeah.
I think that's true. Terrance, how about you? Do you have a ritual, anything you do whenever you're trying to get inspiration? Or are you like Mel, it's just happening all the time and you just have to channel it?
Usually it's happening all the time, but if I'm trying to complete something, or like with my blog, I post something every Wednesday. So if I need to kind of get into a groove, I'll listen to music, or I don't know. It's kind of happening all the time. Like I'll see something and I'll think of a poem. I'll hear something, I'll think of a poem. I'll even read something and get inspired. Maybe even a car passing. It's just random. But if I ever actually need to get into a groove, I'll put on some music.
I love that. Yeah, I do the same. Yvette, do you do anything particular, or is it just the poems are coming all the time? Tell us about that.
I agree with the other two poets this evening. I don't. It is happening all the time, and I believe in showing up to do the work. So if I have writing time, I write. And it's a really cool experience. I like the free write also, where you just like start and you just write stuff, but then what you write is coming from somewhere, and it's coming from somewhere that wants to say what it wants to say, whether it's your inner child or your 21-year-old you. One of them wants to say something, and it's going to come up in a word choice or a theme that you see happening. Once you get rid of all that, all the frosting, you got some cake left there. So I believe in just writing and showing up. If I show up and turn the laptop on and open up Word, the muse will come.
I love it. And we've had such. Terrance, did you want to add something?
No, I was just agreeing with what she said. That was very beautiful how she put it. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, and we've had these gorgeous recipe poems, these love poems, powerful Black Lives Matter poems. Just been a beautiful, beautiful reading. So absolutely. I don't see any other questions in the chat, but I'm going to throw another one out to the group. So I find when I talk to writers they usually have some other creative outlet besides writing. So maybe they knit, maybe they're musicians, maybe they paint. And I'm just very surprised by that and impressed. So we'll start back around. So Mel, is there something else you do that's kind of a creative outlet for you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I like to write other things too. So I kind of count that in there. I like to write fiction that I just really never show anybody, that kind of thing. So it's a good practice. I like to paint. These paintings, these poorly painted paintings are like mine. So I like music. I love to sing. You know, honestly, when I was like 9 years old, I was writing poetry, but I wanted to be a singer. You know, I wanted to be Mariah Carey. So I think that is a big outlet for me. Even to warm up for readings, I typically don't read poems. I'll just sing through some songs and stuff like that, check the voice. So that's my biggest outlet, I would say, creatively, other than writing.
I love that. If I sang before I read, I would just get depressed and like walk into the river or something. But
it really helps me. I feel like sometimes, you know, get into a place where I feel like the best sounding version of my voice is coming out.
I love it. I love it. We can tell it came through. Terrance, is there anything you do that's kind of a creative outlet for you, just aside from your writing, your blog?
Currently, that's all I'm doing. I suppose to start back drawing and painting, and I'm currently working on a podcast. So that would be my outlet outside of writing. But yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yvette, is there anything that you do aside from your writing?
I would say singing too. That's always a good way. Music is a really important part of my creative process. But I don't like music that sounds like music, if that makes any sense. I like music that's at certain frequencies to help me be creative. And I like Tibetan bowls, you know, stuff like that. That does, if it sounds too much like music, then I start doing this and, you know, my mind's in another area, but definitely music.
Yeah. I got to hear more about these Tibetan bowls. That sounds pretty cool. It's interesting how we all have like different things that trigger things for us, right? We do have a question from the group, and also we have some comments. Terrance, Derek, Grant, and I both want to see that podcast. So make sure you let us know when that comes out.
I will.
Yeah. So absolutely. Bill Epps has a question. He says, how do you carry your geography, past and present, with you in your work? Now, we can see a lot of geography in these poems today. We had red clay, we had the Gullah Geechee, we had we definitely felt that connection to the land. So, Mel, do you want to take that one first? How do you carry your geography, past and present?
Sure. For me, that one's pretty simple. Because I am a sentimental, kind of nostalgic poet, I'm usually reaching into places of memory, you know, places of past. And typically that lands me in the geography of my past also. For me, I think I like to focus a little bit on how I can remake the diaspora of a certain area, you know? So I really like thinking about the Southern diaspora of writing, but also I think we've all got to accept it's kind of like soul food, you know, it's high in calorie, you know, we got to accept you can't eat that every day type of thing. It's rich, but it's also so similar these days that there's something about it. I think geographically, I think about places in terms of diaspora. And then when I moved to the desert, I've been thinking about it ecologically, because if you live in one of the extremes, you see the ravages of climate change sooner. And so now I've been thinking geographically in terms of our impacts on the environment. So that's basically one or the other, either memory or environment as it is around me.
Yeah, and what we're doing to it, right?
Yeah.
So, Terrance, tell us about place with your work. I felt Charleston in your work. Tell us about place.
When I'm writing, I guess I visualize myself there. I'm in the moment. Some of it comes from memory. Some of it comes from places that I would like to visit that I haven't visited yet. But I kind of dive into the moment. So I guess I'm present, with past memories and also looking towards the future.
I love that. I love that. Yvette, I heard a lot of place in your work, kitchens, and you talked about bringing the ancestors. Tell us about place, how it plays a role in your work. Did I lose you, Yvette? Okay. The other guys, can you hear me?
I can still hear you.
Okay, so we lost Yvette. So that looks like all the questions we have. I really want to thank you guys for joining us. I want to just give Yvette just a minute. I don't see her. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up our reading, but thank you, Mel. Thank you, Yvette. Thank you, Terrance. It was just an amazing time spending with you tonight and sharing your work. For folks watching, please check out the links. I'm going to drop them again in the chat, which will give you pointers to websites or Yvette's Twitter handle. And so Terrance and Mel both have websites that you can check out and learn more about their work. So thank you for joining Carolina Poets. This series was initially called Poetry Goes Viral because we started it in the middle of a pandemic. We wanted to find a way to have community and have folks connect and read their work and share their work when they couldn't be in bookstores. So we've decided to continue this series, and it's hosted the second and fourth Thursdays of each month. We feature established poets and emerging voices. I want to thank all the readers for their participation tonight and you for watching. Please check out the links to poets' work and buy and support the art that moves you. Thank you very much for joining us.